One of my friends on the Desperate Preacher website said he was naming his sermon, "What Giant Stones You Have, Jesus," a la the Big Bad Wolf, and I think that's about right. Today's reading is in fact the reading we need right now, but on the surface it is apocalyptic. And because most people who gather don't even believe in the second coming, the final days, we tend to spend little time with this reading. But again, I think it's actually what we need. I mention frequently that I love the disciples. I love how clueless they are. Even though God is right in front of them, they are constantly questioning. They make me feel better about my own faith struggles. They remind me of how fraught it all is. This being in relationship with a being one cannot see and cannot prove. The disciples seem to represent, in a really true way, how anxious we all are. All the things they worry about. Is our boat going to sink? Will there be food for us to eat? Will the crowds trample us? Who will sit with you, Jesus, in the end time? They are control freaks, constantly worried about whether they will be okay. Just like today, anxiety back then was everywhere. Now, you've probably noticed if you hang out with people between the ages of 13 and 30 these days, people just offer up their anxieties. They say soon after meeting them, "I have anxiety." Now, some of them, to be truthful, have anxiety disorders, and it is about that which they speak. We know there's been a vast rise in depression and anxiety in the last 20 years. But no, most of them do not have an anxiety disorder. They simply experience anxiety, which is why in my classroom, when a student says, "I have anxiety," I reply, "Of course you do." Now, at a Tonier place, this comment would probably get me hauled in front of some board. But at Epiphany, it's the students who object. "Mrs. Daly, you are probably actually too old to teach. You can't say things like that." But I'm not being glib, I explain. I mean it. Of course Selena has anxiety. We all do. It's part of being human. We worry. They agree, somewhat appeased. Anyway, I like the disciples' ongoing anxiety because it validates my own. If Jesus entered this church right now, I hold on to hope that I would recognize him and follow him. But I know that I would also be beset by relentless worries. In this post-election time of worry, it is instructive to look at what Jesus says here. He says that everything humans build is going to be torn down. He says that many will come in his name saying, "I am he." The Jews at the turn of the century loved their temple. It was built on a giant, formidable foundation. It was the very center of their life together. It was massive, and their great pride as well as their great center. And Jesus said it would fall. And of course, the temple was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. But the point, it seems to me, is that Jesus is looking at his disciples and saying that things are going to fall apart. There is but one permanent thing, God. God is the only foundation that will not crumble, that will not fall down. On the night of the election, I sat with a number of close friends and mourned. I voted for Vice President Harris, that is no secret. Equally true is that there are many people who I know and love and respect who voted for Trump, others who voted for Jill Stein, and still others who refused to vote as a form of protest. One of my friends put her face in her hands and cried, "What are we going to do?" And I reminded myself about Jesus. I really try, whenever something hard happens, to remind myself, these stones are not permanent. This disability is not permanent. Not even death is permanent. It is what saves me from putting my face in my hands and crying all the time. It is a truth I can sometimes access, that there is more than this. There is something that cannot be broken. There is a living water such that you will not thirst again. Gandhi wrote, "You can chain me, you can torture me, you can even destroy my body, but you will never imprison my mind." I hear this same sentiment from most of the spiritual leaders I deeply admire. We can train ourselves, pray ourselves, meditate ourselves to a place where we know that there is a deeper reality. Life is not an in-out machine where you put in this and this comes out. Life is a wildly unpredictable, beautiful, terrifying ride filled with joy and suffering. And there are spiritual ways by which one can train oneself to remember that this life is not the largest or truest reality. It reminds me of another quote. I escaped the walls of the cell in the walls of the classroom. This was spoken by an amazing inmate in the College Behind Bars documentary. I highly recommend this film. It portrays a program run by Bard College where they offer bachelor's degrees to people in prison. I recently showed it to my 8th graders. Caden raised his hand very early in our discussion and asked, "Mrs. Daly, why would you spend time getting a college degree if you were in prison for life or getting the death penalty?" Caden, I replied, "That is the perfect question. I'm throwing out all the notes I used to prepare this class, and we are going to be guided by your own question. Why would someone work for a college degree if they had very little hope of ever getting out of prison?" And we dove in. The documentary is definitely about the hardship of prison and the likelihood of people born into certain zip codes to end up there. But it is even more about the power of education, about the ways people can change their minds and be changed. The prisoners, you see, are incredibly serious students. They are not distracted by devices. They do every bit of homework. They write papers again and again. They walk around the prison yard quoting Herman Melville and argue over poetry at dinner. The education frees them. Anyone watching can see that. So at the end, I ask, why would anyone get a degree when they're locked away in prison? Because, said Jeremy, only 14 but brilliant, the education literally transforms them. And it does. There is one twist in the movie I keep thinking about. At one point, the director does an interview with one of the guards. He asks him, "Do you like the Bard College initiative?" And the guard says, "No." The interviewer is disbelieving. It dramatically lowers recidivism rates. The students have almost no discipline tickets. They are far happier. What could you possibly object to? And the guard said, "I can't afford to send my children to college. Why are these murderers and thieves and drug dealers allowed a privilege for free I cannot afford?" This was only a small moment in a long documentary, but I think keep thinking about it because it seems like a metaphor for the whole conversation about the elites and how they lose touch with the needs of the average working class person in the country. College behind bars, what a great idea, except Jesus is predicting an end time. We can picture the disciples anxiously crowding him. "Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" "Nope," says Jesus, "not yet. There will be birth pangs." And I love this. Not the terrified birth pangs of someone who is ambivalent about pregnancy and mothering, but the satisfied, gleaming, painful pangs of someone who has loved being pregnant and cannot wait to meet her child. Birth pangs not as cruel pain, but as deliverance. Birth pangs means we are waiting on a whole new relationship, as in those pains are letting us know something new is coming. Talking about the end is frightening because despite all the television shows and books and movies about zombies and nuclear wars and raptures, we have absolutely no idea what it will be like. But we do know as Christians what it will mean. It will mean a great wave of care sweeps over all things, and education and love and resources are no longer allotted to some, but to everyone. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? So often we're not even looking out the window and enjoying everything of beauty around us. So often we are unable to participate in the life being offered Instead, we are anxious. But we need not let this anxiety be our prison. We can transcend the prison. We can leap the walls if we can but remember that the God who created us and loves us and invites us into relationship is forever and permanently there. Amen.